whatever the case may be. But you can rest assured, I would not go back.
what we can do about it. So far, very little. Solving the problems of plastics in our lives is a long way off. But even the long journey begins with first steps. We can choose natural materials over plastics whenever possible when buying goods. We can consistently sort plastic waste. We can collect plastics in our neighborhood. One such opportunity for cleaning our environment of plastics will be next week on Wednesday at Clean Up the White Oak Park. We need more volunteers for the cleanup. I guarantee you that most of the trash is just plastic. Please come out next Wednesday to help with this plastic problem. See you next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph. Chris Colby will introduce our visitors and guests. Then I'll have you stay for your announcement.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Which I didn't bring with me, so.
Okay. Okay.
I only have one guest that I signed in at least, and that's Ann Bagel. Ann? You want to stand up? Okay. Welcome. How are you? All right, Mr.
Yeah,
Johnson?
I retired from teaching after 35 years. Yes, so if I'm a student, yeah.
Okay. Welcome. Are there any other guests that need introduction? Yeah, please. Okay. Go on. You're supposed to sign these people in.
This is Chantel Nunn. She works with me, and we're here just to watch the program and have a little conversation.
Okay. Welcome, Chantel. Any other listeners? If it's not, I have an announcement. I pulled on right at the brief. I did receive an announcement from
Chris, can I have you come up here? Because I think the people on Zoom can.
Is with Mike, and that goes both ways.
Yes.
Okay, Rick Olson from the Rotary Club of Prior Lake, who has been very instrumental in coordinating our district and international grants for Rochester, for Rotary International. We have an exciting announcement that a grant program, an actual global grant, which is a large worldwide grant of about $81,000 to Uganda, I don't know how to pronounce this, Nakavale refugee settlement in Uganda. It's for extending a water line to a future school and an infiltration system for 100,000 liter water tank for refugees who are settled in Nakavale. So it's a pretty big deal. And for those of you who are new to Rotary, there aren't a lot of new people, but just so you're aware that this is one of the places where not only some funds from our actual Rotary Club go, but also part of our dues that we pay to Rotary International go to help administer and fund some of these programs. So just so you know, that isn't a dead issue. Those things are still going on, even though this one has been in the works for several years. Another project that just recently was completed is improving education and sanitation in Nakavale. Also a $37,000 educational grant for education materials, latrines and hand washing stations, and laptop computers and more. So as you know, it's an important part of why we are Rotarians. So that just so you know, that's the deal.
Thank you, Chris. Oh, okay. Thank you. And and Heidi Mason is also a visitor today who is online, coming from using risers from the risers. So welcome, Heidi. I want to thank all the volunteers who worked at Quarry Hill Fall Festival last weekend. If you volunteered, please stand. Appreciate it. Thank you to Tamsin, and her crew for organizing the golf outing last week. It was a lot of fun. Marilyn Dillon is gonna make an announcement about Cradle to Career and the Cook for Kids event.
Hey everyone, I'm really thrilled to report that for Cook for Kids next Tuesday night, the 19th, we have all the food volunteers that we need. Unless there's someone else who would really, really like to make another lasagna, Bill Victor has an awesome recipe. But you know, we're gonna be just fine with the 5 lasagnas that we have. So, however, the family activity has morphed into, actually Jeremiah is doing a fall event next Tuesday night. And they need volunteers to assist with the children with games, a bounce house, and kid tattoos. And so, you know, the really good news about this is that whoever does this doesn't have to come up with an activity for the kids. The activities will already be there. So if you'd like to spend a couple hours from 5 to 7 next Tuesday evening, helping children have fun, I'm going to route this sign-up sheet around one more time, and feel free to sign up. Since I got here today, Suzanne Dennison signed up with me, so it's like, yay, we just really need 3 more people, and that would be great. So the other thing is, of course, the Cradle to Career Education Summit that is coming up on Wednesday, October 4th. So that's just a few weeks away now. You know, for months it has felt like it was so far out there, but it is it's coming up close. And they need 30 volunteers for this all-day event. Right now, and this is a 3-club opportunity. Right now there are 17 slots that are filled of the 30. 5 of those are from our club, from TRCR. So again, if you'd like to, you know, spend either the entire day, if you'd like to attend the summit, it's going to be really awesome, wonderful speakers, or if you just like to volunteer for an hour or so, please go to the TRCR website and the information is all there. You can register to attend the event. You can click on the volunteer button to volunteer. These are things like the welcome table, being a note taker or the technology person for the breakout sessions, or set up and take down. So, and then the final opportunity related to this is they do need funds for this event, for print materials. And so there is a donate button also on that event, and any amount is welcome and needed. So any of these items that you might be able to help with, we're really looking forward to a successful education summit surrounding helping our kids be successful from cradle to career. And then, so Audrey is going to let us know how much money we have so far for this.
So as of today, we have $1,650 that's been raised toward and what will happen with that is the Rotary Club of Rochester will be a sponsor for the event. And I know we have more money coming in. Julie Ruzick, who's the executive director for Cradle to Career, says, I just need to let her know in about a week or so. So if you're interested in donating, you can hand me a check today. You can go online to, there's an opportunity to just give online, and you pick the when you go in and you can pick the foundation to make a donation and just say it's for Cradle to Career so we know. Or you can mail a check to our post office box. Any of those options and all that is appreciated. Lori is going to make an announcement.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here on behalf of the 3-club leadership and also the Holiday Classic Steering Committee. As everyone knows, the Holiday Classic had its last basketball games, whatever you want to call it, in December of 2022. Through the years, the 34 years, the steering committee put aside some of the money that we raised and put it into what we call the reserve fund. And this was solely to protect all of our clubs' budgets, the 3 clubs' budgets, in case we had to cancel because of Minnesota weather or anything that was beyond our control. That way, we could still pay our bills and not have to tax any of the athletic clubs for money to fund it. With the Holiday Classic ending, we have over $27,000 that we need to give back to the youth in the community. These funds were raised over the years for the youth, and so it was decided with 3 club leadership and the Holiday Classic Steering Committee that these reserve funds should go back to the youth in our community. We also thought that it made the most sense, since so many Rotarians were involved, that all the Rotarians have a voice in how that money is dispersed. So you should have received an email from Sherston on Monday, signed by Ashok, with the survey attached. If you haven't seen it in your email, there's surveys on the table. It's 1 question. So you check which box, which option you want for the 3 clubs leadership to pursue. Depending on what that is, we may have further follow-up. For example, if the majority of the Rotarians decide we want to do an impact grant or grants, we'll probably follow up with Rotarians to decide and get opinions on what those grants should be. If we want to invest the funds into an endowment fund, we'll make a decision as to what fund that makes the most sense to do. And the 3rd option on there was if we wanted to designate some or all of the funds to our Rotary projects, that's another option. And then if anybody has any other suggestions, we would love to hear them. We really want to get this wrapped up, the survey wrapped up by the 22nd of September, so that we can possibly make an announcement when we have our 3 club meeting with District Governor of Police. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the club leadership. Myself, Jen Woodford has been working with me on this to just wrap up the holiday class, have a great opportunity to get the Rotary name out to the community again, of giving so much back financially and through our volunteers. So thanks.
So if you want to take the survey today, just mark it and hand it to Sherston. That counts. That's no, if you don't want to follow up when you get home. So feel free to take that survey and hand it to Sherston. We're going into year 2 of our mentorship program for young professionals. Currently, we are seeking mentors. So if you're interested, please contact Sherston or Mariana. So once we have all of our mentors in place, then we'll keep going on that program. As Joseph mentioned, September 20th at 6 p.m. is our monthly cleanup at White Oaks Park. It only takes 45 minutes to 60 minutes, and all help is welcome. We have a 3 club gathering. The District Governor, Patricia McLeese, is our keynote. I have a note that is on October 10th. Apparently that's a date change. And it's an evening event, and more information will be coming out. But mark your calendars for the evening of October 10th. Partners for Peace, UN International Day of Peace is September 21st. Did I miss any other announcements? Okay. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Vicki Allen.
Your program committee has been working really hard to bring good programs. How do you guys like the program so far this year? That's the right answer. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about our program today. I've heard Mike and Judy talk Rochester Area Foundation once a month for something called Coffee and Conversations, and Mike and Judy were the speakers on that, and they were just amazing. I thought everybody needs to hear what they need to say, so they're going to give us a great presentation today. Mike is a retired FBI agent after serving for 30 years in the Bureau. His career included investigations of a wide range of cases related to terrorism, white-collar crime, kidnapping, foreign counterintelligence, assault, and bank robberies, to name a few. He worked out of the Minneapolis office and resident agencies in St. Paul, Fargo, Grand Forks, and Rochester. Judy Wilson, most of us know Judy because she's an awesome Rotarian. Judy practices law with the Rochester Law Firm of Wagner Taylor. For 30 years, she has represented families in estate planning and trust and estate administration, with special emphasis on tax minimization strategies. She's licensed to practice in Minnesota, Wisconsin, as a frequent speaker on estate planning and charitable giving, and she's also a member of the Greater Rochester Rotary. Please welcome back and Judy. Just can speak right into it. Okay.
Maybe you should be on this side or the camera's over here. Okay, well, we really appreciate this opportunity to be here today. Really, it's so wonderful to see all these are like the high-powered Rotarians here. Wow, wow, this is like Rotary luminaries here. So we're really happy to be here. And we have, I guess, unfortunately, had conversations with people who have been the victims of crime. Obviously, Mike's job, and then in my work, since I do a lot of estate planning, unfortunately, I've had some clients who have run into problems with being victims of fraudulent activity, and as you guys know, it's really becoming much more prevalent, right? It's just so easy for these companies to just, hit a button on the computer and all the fraudulent texts go out and emails. And so it's just become so much easier for the bad guys to do their work that we all just have to be more vigilant about things. But speaking of vigilance, I wanted to just tell them the story from your kind of early career. Okay, Mike, you only were in the bureau for this is your first year of your career. You're going into a VFW looking for a guy, right?
Well, yes, it's a whole thing about, I guess the underlying theme is that just because someone says that they're somebody like a law enforcement officer doesn't mean that they necessarily are. And but sometimes they really are law enforcement too. And this one goes back to I walked into a VA and I have my brand new credentials and
right on the credentials is a picture of the person and then like their little official thing. You've seen that in the movies. It opens up like this. So Mike, talking to the guy.
Well, yeah, and we're looking for a fugitive at this time. And we didn't know that he would sometimes frequent the VA. So I go in there and you have to identify yourself who you are. So I take out my credentials. They're just creaked open because they're so new. And I just show them, that I've got my photos in there. And I asked him if he was familiar with this person. And he took my credentials from me and he looked at the picture and he goes, no, I've never seen this guy before. Yes, so that was one of my first.
Yes, and later in your career, when they still had that picture, that would have made sense, right?
Well, that is true, because I still have my picture from 30 years earlier, and they would say, no, are you sure you're this guy? No, that's really me, but
yes. All right, so anyway, what we want to kind of center on with this talk is we want to kind of, I guess, tell you some of the stories, that we've encountered with, in our years. And then maybe talk about some ways that you could, prevent yourself or your loved ones really from, being a victim of fraud. So so everyone is always thinking about, the financial costs of, this fraudulent activity, which is in the billions of dollars per year. But what I think people really need to appreciate is all the other costs. If you have a family member who's been a victim of fraud, I mean, obviously there's, the stress, depression, isolation from it. It's really, the money is really kind of the least of it, really, when you talk about it. Some people are just really get into a really bad situation and it really can affect them mentally. So we want to kind of keep an eye out for, our family members as well. So let's just kind of talk about some of the general, categories of the fraud, and then we'll kind of talk about some specific stories that we've been into. So you guys can, just read that. But I think you have a story.
Well, the thing is technology. It is when the internet started and things switched over from mailings to now emails. It was relatively easy to track. But now with increased technology, it's very, very difficult because you'll have companies that, for an email address, if we try to subpoena and find out who that comes back to, there is no record. They don't keep a record as to who it is. Very, very difficult. And all sorts of technologies which make it more difficult. For example, one of the things they can do now is spoof your phone number. And so you'll get a phone call and you'll see in your caller ID, it might be a law enforcement agency or maybe a financial institution calling you. Odds are it's not going to be that way. In fact, I recall I was at the office one time and I saw an incoming call from FBI Mankato. Well, of course, they know the guys out there, so I pick up the phone and it is someone who is claiming to be an FBI agent out of Mankato. And I have been compromised and I need to, send them some money. And of course, they're trying to scam me. And
They don't know, they just called the.
right, they don't know my rights. So I'm very busy, and that's part of the problem too, is that it's just so common that we just don't investigate these things regularly. It's just continual flow of fraud going on every day. So I hang up, and then a short while later, the phone rings again, and I look up, and it's FBI Rochester calling FBI Rochester. It's just a good example as to they're perpetually trying to commit this fraud. If it doesn't work the first time, they're going to go on the next, and the next, and the next. And they do have this technology that can really fool you. And the thing is, if you would get something like that, and you're talking to the person on the other end, what I would usually do is, for example, I called somebody, and I said, Mike Wilson with the FBI. I understand they're going to be skeptical because I'm calling by phone. So I would just say, hey, go on internet and Google FBI Rochester, get a phone number, then call that number and ask my name. Then if I'm legitimate, I'll answer the phone call. So that's a way to verify, who is on the other end. Simple thing. And the person you're talking to, if they're really legitimate, they're not going to mind. They're going to say, sure, you bet. Take a minute, Google our phone number, and then call and ask me, and then we can continue the discussion. So it's a simple thing that, I really encourage you, if you do have a question as to who the person is on the other end, take a minute, stop, and call them back, call the main number back and ask for the person. It's an easy thing to do. It doesn't take much time.
Yeah, and as you all know too, you'll get a text or an email from your financial, purportedly to be from your bank or something. You don't respond to that, right? You go and either call your bank or go right online. And if there's a legitimate message for you from your bank, usually it's in like a messages, when you go online. So you kind of all know that. It's just so easy to send these out that's why you have to be vigilant about it. All right. So you can go to the next slide. So let's just talk about an imposter scam, because as you have said too, Mike, with AI now and being able to actually replicate someone's voice, it's going to get much more complicated.
Yeah, that gets back to what we just discussed before. One of the common scams was you would perhaps you have a granddaughter or grandson, and you would get a phone call and hey, grandma, I'm in jail. I need some money. Can you wire transfer to this account? I need to bond out. Very actually common scheme, but actually very successful. And the voice of the caller, with the phone, it's hard to make sure that this is the person you're talking to. And it's just someone who's scamming you. They have a little bit of information they've gotten off the internet, and it's just amazing what you can get about. And there's individuals, their backgrounds, their families. These databases are available to just about everybody. And again, if you would get a call like that, well, what facility are you at? Oh, I'm in Olmsted County. Well, okay, Sally, let me get back to you. Then you hang up, you call Olmsted County, say, do you have so-and-so in custody? That's just a simple way to verify. But nowadays, with increased technology, it's become a lot more sophisticated. They have voice replication systems and image replication systems where they will make your daughter, granddaughter look like they're really talking to you. It's very sophisticated. It's just starting, and it's going to be the new one step up from the old traditional phone call in that scenario. So really, again, if you would get something like that, verify it just by calling the institution. So that's gonna be a whole other world of fraud opportunity out there. So just be aware of that.
Yeah, you know, the other thing is, it's always my recommendation too, is if you don't recognize the call, don't answer the call, right? Just let it go to voicemail. I mean, that's like the easiest advice. And if they have spoofed it and you picked up the phone and it's not who you think it is, or just hang up. Please do not engage with anyone on the phone. So my dad happens to be, he's just has a really great sense of humor. And so he's kind of thinking of this as like the opportunity to kind of pull a little joke on them. And I'm like, yeah, just do not even engage, okay? Because now you're kind of on the sucker list. You know, you are someone who is engaging with them, right? And so your name is now on the list being sold to many, many other, organizations.
And I just add to it, you also don't want to engage because again, nowadays with increased technology, you don't necessarily want to have them take more time with you or anger them because it's very common and very easy. And we saw it all the time. They can dox you, which is they have your personal information, your personal data, where you live, family members' names, perhaps what financial institutions you go to. Again, that information isn't as hard to get the public database information as you think. And they will distribute that out onto the internet, all that information, perhaps say your social security number, out it goes. It's called doxing. Maybe you've heard about that in the news where this happened to some jurors, in a case out of Atlanta, where all your personal information goes out. The other thing that we've seen happen is if you anger them or upset them, they'll get back at you by what's called swatting, which is they will call or fabricate a phone call to local law enforcement, whereas a nasty crime is occurring at your residence and police will respond. It's not you, of course, calling, but they're going to show up at your house, guns drawn, because it's going to be a violent crime if they're calling in. And it can be very dangerous. So usually, I know like your dad, I'm going to mess with them a little. They can mess with you a lot worse than you can with them. So just like Judy said, hang up and be done with it.
Yeah, so my parents got the, your granddaughter's in trouble call. And then my dad's like, well, what's her middle name? I was like, Dad, you know what I mean? You just, he's just trying to be all tricky with them, like trying to catch them, So anyway, the other thing is kind of look out, with your, family members is that, especially if someone is more isolated at home, then this kind of can become like a friend to them. And that's absolutely what they're playing into, right? They're calling, someone that's high. Unfortunately had a case where a woman is living alone on a farm and the bad guys got her number and just were like kind of drawing her in. She was sending them money because they became, just a part of her life. Well, then she told her kids and her kids were like, Mom, this is insane. You shouldn't be doing this. And so then she told the person on the phone, I'm not going to be doing this anymore. Well, then they got threatening with her. And because you can find out all the information about family members, they said that they were going to hurt her family members unless she paid the money. So then, of course, she was paying money. So they even had, of course, you guys from Google Earth, right? They know exactly. This could be like a guy in the basement in Russia, right? So he's saying he's going to come there. He knows what her house looks like. He's describing her house. And it just was a really frightening situation for her and the family. But just to show you the lengths that these people went to. So the kids say, Mom, we're going to cancel this phone line and you're just going to have this like flip phone and nobody's going to, so you have it for emergencies, but no one's going to be calling you. So that was fine for a while. Then one day a tow truck driver arrives at her house and says, we got a call for a tow here. And she's like, well, I call. And the driver says, well, that's what the person thought you might say. So they want to talk to you. It was the criminals, and they did it with a florist too, had flowers delivered because they just wanted to keep re-engaging her.
And through social engineering, they know what checks with this person and they play on that, maybe loneliness or perhaps some confusion there, and they'll play on those weaknesses to continue engaging so they can keep getting the money. And they're very good. They're psychiatrists, psychologists. They're very good at using that social engineering with their victim. And the victim sometimes can be completely convinced they're so good that this is real. And you as family member or friend, really, it's so critical that you help and reach out to someone you think was a victim of fraud. Because a lot of times no one is looking out for them. And try to show them why it is a fraud. Explain to them if you can. Another thing we would do too is, if you can't get through to them, say, well, let's talk to law enforcement. And we've actually had victims come in, we would sit them down and explain to them, this is why it's fraud, this is why you don't want to send any more money out. It's just, if they don't believe you, don't let it go. Keep working with them until you're satisfied at least that they're no longer being victimized by this person. So.
And you talked about how it's very difficult to pursue something like that. Phone calls probably from overseas.
Yeah, in fact, majority of these frauds originate overseas, and they're very hard to prosecute because, again, with all the technology to track it, and then once you do track and identify what country they're in, then you have to work with that law enforcement, whether it's Russia or Nigeria. It's hard to work with. The law enforcement doesn't have to work with you if they don't want to. And so it's very hard to prosecute. So you can give them the information and try to work, but if they don't want to, the fraud just continues. So that is why a lot of these things originate overseas. A lot of the money goes overseas. I just would add that if you would become a victim, it's so easy to become that again, because these people are very good at what they do. You would send money. Usually that money, as you would know, on the wire transfer will go overseas. If you, within 48 hours, are kind of aware that, oops, I made a mistake, contact the FBI office, because you have analysts that do have contacts can sometimes reverse that transfer if it's caught quick enough. So you can perhaps get your money back. So feel comfortable to call the FBI Minneapolis, and you'll be put in touch with an analyst who can hopefully help get your money back. Of course, it's going to have to be a significant amount, probably $10,000, $15,000, just again for a resource perspective. But that's another thing to consider if you were a friend or a client to become a victim.
Yeah, so you had a case too where you shouldn't even really trust, what's on the envelope that you received through the.
Yes, it's very true. Again, it's, we always give people the benefit of the doubt, which is great. I mean, you want to do that. You want to give someone the benefit of the doubt. But when it comes to money and winning prizes, getting free money, I would be very skeptical about that if you get that information. And one of the common scams out there that happens is, for example, if you get a letter from Nigeria, you're going to think, oh, fraud, off it goes. But if you get it from Rushford, Minnesota, let me see what this is all about. Well, the scammers are aware of this. So what they will do is they will find a local person and they will send them letters, mailings, already, prepackaged, FedEx, whatever. And then they will ask them to mail them locally. So it will appear that it's all coming domestically from the United States, but it's really not. It's originating overseas. You find someone locally to remail the stuff out for them. So that's another scam to be aware of. If you get it, just keep that in the back of your mind. I think this may not be what it appears.
Yeah, even here in Rochester, I know just a whole slew of physicians here got letters from a Canadian law firm, and they all had this long lost relative and they needed to contact them and send in money. I mean, it was just absolutely ridiculous, but people kind of just thought, oh, it's coming from a law firm, or it looked like a law firm. You just had to Google and there wasn't such a thing, but this is just very, very common.
It is, unfortunately.
All right. So you can just click. These are, the different, how easy it is to use mass marketing fraud. That's all I wanted to say about that. Is that I had a case once where kind of the same thing was the victim was really just brought in. They start out as friends and then they kind of start, I guess, asking them for money, and then the person finally realizes, the victim's like, wow, I'm really giving them a lot of money, and then it kind of snowballed into, you're going to do this, and they're threatening to do it. And this poor victim actually went out and bought electronics to be sent, because they kept saying, if you do this, we'll pay you back. If you do this, we'll pay you back. And it just was such a horrible situation. But using victims of fraud to actually defraud other victims is a thing.
Very common.
Yeah, so because the person who's been defrauded feels like, oh, I'm like 50,000 out now, and if I just do this other thing, they're gonna pay me back. So it's just a horrible, horrible cycle.
And just to add to what Judy said earlier, to keep you in their grasp, they will threaten. That's part of their script. If the person backs off and says they don't want to do it anymore, they'll threaten you. They'll threaten your family members, or we're gonna, we know where you live, and they do. I mean, they have your address, but they're just gonna move on to the next person once you're done sending the money. So 30 years of fraud cases, even drug cases, that I've never had anyone ever get injured, or these threats have never, they're not gonna come after you. They're overseas, and they are just using that as a threat. It's part of the script. So if you do have a relative who is threatened like that, you can just tell them that they're nowhere near. They're overseas. They're thousands of miles away. They're not going to come in. They're not going to hurt you. But that can be a really scary thing. So take time to explain that to them. And again, if it needs to have them talk to law enforcement about that, and maybe they'll put their mind at ease. But fortunately, that's part of the script quite often.
Yes, so we would like you to just be aware of, some of these warning signs, the very, very typical warning sign is that you have to act fast. There's this sense of urgency about it, and that is, definitely going to be, playing on psychology. Like we said, these are really trained professionals. Then, like we talked about, entrenching themselves into their life, which is just so horrible to do, and that's really very common. Like you guys, you can go just white pages, says who else lives there or your other relatives, and that's how easy it is, to find out the names of your relatives. So it's easy to manipulate them through that too. All right. So you have said it's really important for people to report the crime. Most of the time, people who are in the situation feel embarrassed about it.
Right. And you shouldn't feel embarrassed, because it happens to everybody, doctors, lawyers, investigators. It happens to everybody because they're so good at what they do. But the key thing is, okay, you may have become a victim, but you need to report it to law enforcement, local or federal, just so perhaps it doesn't happen to somebody else. So don't be embarrassed by it. It happens to everybody. And please report it. And at a minimum, that information gets entered into databases that it can make connections to potential a larger fraud that's going on. And the reporting is helpful. So
yeah, the other thing is we have up here, you can report it, to the Federal Trade Commission, Minnesota Board on Aging, so that they're aware of what scams are out there. The other thing is, please just don't rely on your credit card company to cover your mistake. So I think that credit card companies are going to be doing that less, covering that when you've made a mistake and maybe, given someone your credit card information. So I had a friend in Charterhouse, and the call came that we can offer you a better interest rate on your credit card, and I just need your credit card number. So she gave her credit card number, and then she called me like 2 seconds later was like, I think I made a mistake. So we called up Citibank and said, whatever happens is fraudulent. And they're like, well, there's already, 4,000 from Saudi Arabia has already been charged. So when she got her bill, then I, sent in, letters saying that this was fraudulent. And then they said, well, we'll look this over. And then, 2 months later, they say, well, because you gave the credit card number, you're liable for it. I was so shocked, because I was like, doesn't your algorithm block a Saudi Arabian charge from this, 80-year-old in Charterhouse? I just was so angry about that. So I contacted the Attorney General's office. So you can always do that too. If you don't have, satisfaction from the credit card company, then we contacted the Attorney General's office, and then Citibank, gave her the credit for it. But just, I think some people are cavalier about it because the credit card companies have been covering these things. But I think you should just be aware of that. All right. Okay. So then, we want to, yeah, talk about, what you can do, spot the imposters, take a break, you can go forward. So we already talked about this, that's kind of the step one, right? It's just not falling into the net. That's what we're talking about right now. It's just kind of setting up your radar for, these people who are not who they say they are. All right, and then if you want to.
And I think along those lines too, everyone gets the emails or text messages about your package is lost in UPS, or your credit card has been compromised. Take a break. Just don't immediately respond to it. Take a break. This doesn't have a good. I guarantee you it's going to be fraud. But if you do think there might be something to it, just call the fraud department at the credit card company. Google, get the fraud department's number and call. Don't follow through with this anonymous text message or email you've received. I guarantee you, 100 out of 100 times it's going to be fraud. You can investigate. You take a little bit of time stepping back and doing your own investigation.
And plus, I don't even open them. Like, that's how paranoid I am, because I know just opening an email triggers an open response to the sender, right? This has been opened, so now they know that there's a live person on the other end. So when I see it, I'm just deleting.
Yeah, and again, as Drew's getting to as far as the emails, never open it, because that will infect your computer, and then you don't even know it's infected, and it's trouble, and it's really hard to remove their information. They're controlling your computer. What I would recommend, if you think that's happened, and it happens all the time, take it to Best Buy. They've got the Geek Squad. Take your computer in, and they will go through with their equipment and take off anything that shouldn't be on there. But it's worth an effort doing that, because it's very easy for bad guys to infect your computers.
All right, and so please, do research. Like we said, if you're getting what you think is a deal, or they, you get something in the mail, or they call you, just go online and you can just put in the name of it with review or scam or complaint, and find out about that. I'm always very skeptical of free offers, because I was sort of brought up, there's no such thing as a free lunch. So, obviously whatever you get, whatever you're giving them, you're paying for what you're getting from them. I mean, it's just, I feel like there's these free trials. Basically what they're saying is you get it and you give us your credit card number, and then you're going to forget to cancel it. So I'm really always skeptical of that. And then, just look out for your friends. And if you're in this situation, talk to a trusted friend, or, like your attorney, your accountant, or your financial advisor, because they would have some good advice on this too.
Yep. I would just add to that, you won the contest, you won money. Like 99 out of 100 times, it's fraud. You haven't won the money. But let's say that 1%, I have won some money, and you actually get a check. Here's your check for $5,000. Oh my gosh, I won. This is phenomenal. Well,
I never win anything, right?
Yeah, I never win anything. Well, then you're gonna get a call. I'm gonna say, winner of our grand prize, we sent you $5,000 too much. This is very common scam. We're so sorry, but congratulations on being a winner. I hope you enjoy the money, but we oversent the money. Would you please wire $5,000 back, from your account to our bank? We're very sorry for this inconvenience. Oh, sure, I'm the winner. Off it goes. Well, you go to your bank and check bounces. It's no good. Well, the money's out of your account. It's too late. Super common scheme. So the 1% of the time that you win, the odds are there's going to be a catch. I guarantee you.
All right. And so as you all, I just like hang up, shred, delete. So, just hang up on those robocalls. The other thing is, shred mail. Don't just put aside like those solicitations. That happens a lot. You probably get so much mail, especially Rotarians, because you're such charitable people that you're giving to causes, and then you're getting more and more mail. So my recommendation is that you just shred everything that comes in. Sometimes when you put things aside and think about it for later, you might be tired, you may be more susceptible to a scam. In a nutshell, my advice regarding charitable contributions is that you just set a budget, you stick, those people that you want to give to for the year, and throughout the rest of the year, you're just tossing the envelopes from those people, and just like once a year, these are the people I give to. And then maybe once in a while, they are all selling their organization and they all believe in their organization, right? But you are being, this is a sales situation. So, just kind of be careful with that. And then you had a charity scheme.
Well, I did. It was, and this is again, I'll get to a real fast, a priest had, received a call from someone who was supposed to be a member of their parish. And they, their car broke down and Father, can you send us the money? I sure do that. And, wires off $100. Well, I don't have enough money. My wallet's stolen. I need money to stay at a hotel. Oh, okay. Where are you at? Wire you the money to like the location. Well, again, based on Julie's earlier email or slides, there's a persistent pattern going on here, which is I need money and I'm not making much progress getting back to Rochester here. Very persistent. And so that should be a clue. Another thing that the father could have done is call the hotel. Which hotel are you staying at? Oh, then you can call or have law enforcement run out there and verify the person's there. Little things you can do. Long story short, the guy, you had the worst luck you could ever imagine. Car breaking down every day practically, just losing his wallet multiple times. He ended up sending a lot of money to the scammer.
And you direct the checks to various
locations.
Western Union.
Yeah,
right?
so he would wire it to say, Iowa, or he's coming up from Florida, every stop along the way. Well, the key thing is that just because you send it to a particular location or state, that doesn't mean that that's where the wire transfer is actually picked up. It was actually being picked up in Miami, Florida. And the father thought it was being picked up along the journey because that's where it was directed to the various cities where the person was supposed to be traveling from. So even that, with the charitable situation, you got to be very careful. Maybe do some extra due diligence on that and homework, because who would have thought that you direct it to somewhere that can be picked up at another location? And that's what happened there.
All right, okay. So here's kind of just a little, formula that in order to decrease your risk, you want to decrease your vulnerability and your exposure. And just kind of think about this with your family members too. So you could go to the next slide. And so as we had just talked about, it's just critical to update your computer software. Please always do that, because as Mike has said too, law enforcement is barely like an inch ahead of the bad guys.
We're usually an inch behind the bad guys, right?
So
that's part of the problem.
And then, as you all know, secure passwords, right? Everybody knows that. You may want to consider, a password manager instead of just having that, same password for everything. As you've seen those statistics, how easy it is for a computer to just crack the code on a password. So the other thing that you kind of take this as you would like, but because of Mike's job, we as a family really just don't post on social media at all, really, because he's had cases where they're just getting information off of your posts. You just, as Mike has told, we have 3 daughters. You just want to stay under the radar because the bad guys are they're out there, right? But you just want to stay under the radar.
Yeah, and they could take the photos of your family members and manipulate those images, and soon it's it's all over the internet. And then it's out on the internet. There's no pulling it back. But just keep that.
Yeah, and it was an extortion case with really just manipulated images. So we just generally don't do anything like that.
That was a Rochester case too. So.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's like minimizing your vulnerability. And then, minimizing the opportunity for them to find you. And so, you can go to that, getting out of pre-screened credit card offers. I had a client, just to be funny, he decided to take one of those pre-screened offers. He ripped it in half, then taped it back together, and then used his son's address. And a credit card was sent to the son's address. So it was like, that's how easy a criminal can just use these, pre-screened offers. They just take it from your mailbox and get a credit card in your name. So even better, if you aren't in the need for, getting more credit, just put a freeze on your credit file. That's really what I recommend too, is that you have to contact, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. You have to go to all three of them, but it doesn't take very long online. And then you just freeze it. So that means no one can get credit in your name. Now, if you need it though, you're gonna have to unfreeze it. So like I had a client who like was in Macy's and they said, you get 15% off if you open up a card. And then of course her credit was frozen, so the card was denied. She was so embarrassed because the credit was denied. But I was like, well, because it was frozen. So you want to just kind of keep that in mind. But I think it's a very good idea. If you don't need credit, just go there and then freeze your file. All right, and then we can, just finish up with any questions from anyone.
I would just say, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I noticed lately when I'm going from hotel and that nobody has a credit card anymore. Everybody's using debit. And for hotel, that is the worst thing to check in a hotel. Because we're playing with real money. What is your opinion on credit versus debit cards?
I mean, I think either one can be compromised. I think it's probably other reasons why people are going more towards the debit, just maybe more management.
Yeah, and I think
reasons.
Probably also though the bankers can answer this question too, whereas, the debit card, it's coming right from your account. So if you're defrauded, very difficult to get it back. Whereas a credit card, at least, you haven't really been out money yet. So, definitely like online shopping, you should not be using a debit card at all. Just credit card for that.
This is one other thing I wanted to add to, and to be really careful, emails. You can get an email from somebody like mine, it's like Michael.Wilson. Well, they might have Michael.Wilson with 2 L's in it. And you're going to get that email. You're going to just look at it. Oh, Mike Wilson, yeah. And you're going to respond to the email you received. Well, if you really look at it closer, you're going to see it's actually a different email because it's got 2 L's and not 1. And that is another common scheme. And this happened in Rochester at a financial institution where a person who handled the funding for the institution received an email supposedly from the CEO saying, please send the money to this account. We need this done right away. A lot of money. And it really wasn't from the CEO. It was an email that looked like it was from the CEO. And I think it was just a very small, insignificant little variation of it, which even I looked at like, wow, I didn't even see it the first or second time I saw it. So just be cognizant of that as well.
Yeah, that happens with websites too. As you all know, if you get a link in an email, you can just hover over it with your mouse and it'll show you where it's really going. So, that's something too, because it can just be disguised.
Yeah, so easy to replicate.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The picture you paint is getting darker.
Darker for sure.
If they are into email and they're into the mail and they're into the phone, the bottom line message I'm taking home is don't trust anybody. So if we do that, you wait for them to leave a message and then you know it's Uncle Joe, or to send you another letter, or at some point, if we don't trust anybody, how do you know where you're going?
Well, I think there's simple ways to verify. All it is really trying to verify. And that is where you actually contact the financial institution. They all have fraud departments. Your account has been compromised. Don't respond to the link. Call the fraud department. Just Google, Citibank fraud department, and tell them what you received and has my account been compromised. And they will tell you. It's just a matter of doing a little bit of work on your end, and you'll be okay. So I think there's an answer to it, but it takes a little bit of extra work on our part.
Yeah, and as far as the phone is concerned, so when I was growing up, we had the actual landline, and there's 5 kids, and so if the phone rang during dinner, we'd all want to get up and answer the phone, and my dad would say, a ringing phone is a request, not a command. So you can take that with your cell phone too.
To go along with Phil's question there, it's getting worse.
Yes.
What are you doing with the younger generation? How are you teaching the younger generation? They use the phone constantly. They purchase everything online. Where do you educate them?
Well, that's a great question. I know from our agency, we do go to schools and we have actually agents. That's all they do is they to go around and give informative discussions and talks. It's one thing. I don't know, maybe it's just from family members looking out for the kids or friends looking out for them and
Yeah, and you probably also don't see as many young people on those lists because they don't necessarily have the resources. You know what I mean? The typical, you just get a list from AARP and, now you've got a list of people who generally will have some resources.
And I would just add again, just looking out for each other and, telling your parent or a friend next door, like, if you get something that doesn't look right or feel right, don't respond. Call me, let me know, and I'll take a look at it. We'll look at it together. I mean, it's just looking out for each other is huge. And then if that doesn't work, you can contact law enforcement and maybe they can come in and intervene as well. One last thing, Drew's point was shred, get rid of it. You bet, get rid of it, shred, delete. However, if you become a victim and you have lost money, don't shred, don't delete, maintain everything. Because when we come in to talk to you, we're going to want everything you've got. All the emails, all of, mailings you might have received. Very important. And the other thing too is if you suspect that you might become a victim of fraud, record it. Minnesota is a one consent state. So you're consenting to recording. That's all you need. Record the conversation. That's great evidence, for us, because you got the back end, words, committing fraud. So do that too, if you are up for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy and Mike. As a thank you for your presentation, a gift will be given to a local nonprofit. Next week is our third Thursday service or social option. The service opportunity is to work at the post bulletin digitization project at the Rochester Public Library. We meet in meeting room B on the second floor, and the social option is to meet for lunch at Twiggs. Both start at noon. As we close out today, I want to give thanks to all who assisted. Sue, who was our greeter, Christine for leading us in the 4-way test, Joseph, who provided the reflection, Chris for introducing visitors, and John Woodruff, our sergeant at arms, for helping at the visitors table. And a big thank you to our speakers. Thank you all. Create hope in the world. We are adjourned.